Yeah, you have to change it. That's crazy.
You got moved up.
Yeah, it's like,
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call the Upper Thames River Source Protection Authority meeting to order at 9:30 a.m. And we will get started this morning. We'll start the Source Protection Authority and then we'll move into our regular Board of Directors meeting. Start with number 1. Is there any modifications to the agenda? Seeing none, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, is there any presentations or delegations? And then we'll move to administrative business. 4.1, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. Is there a mover and seconder for the minutes? Skylar and George, please. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor? Thanks, carried. We do not have reports for consideration, but we do have reports for information, and that is the striking committee update. Will anybody be giving an update on that, or is it just for information?
It's just for information to compare. However, Sandy and Jennifer are here and Julie is on Zoom as well. If there's any questions.
Excellent. Would anybody move the recommendation of the report? Skylar, seconder for that. George, discussion on that or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Approved. Thank you very much. Well, that was a quick meeting. Can I ask someone for adjournment? Please, thank you very much. Excellent. And now, we'll do it officially here. There we go. I will now open up the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board of Directors meeting for June 20th, 2023 at 9:32 a.m. And I will start with just before we get going, I do want to acknowledge that we do have Sandy and Peter Cuddy on Zoom. I will ask participants if they can to have their cameras on, especially during voting. We want to make sure that we can see you and make sure that you're included in the discussions. With that, I will start with the territorial acknowledgement. We will begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Adirondwan, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples, who have longstanding relationship to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nations community of this area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nations of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation of Moraviantown. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all the original peoples of Turtle Island. And I want to thank Michelle for giving me a laminated copy of that. Thank you very much. I will now ask if there's modifications to the agenda, which I believe there is. For section 4, we'll have 4.1, the motion. Tracy, would you like to explain that?
Yeah, just we're going to have a presentation by our Integrated Watershed Management Unit. Certainly mentioned in the FYI, but just got missed adding to the formal agenda for this meeting.
Excellent. Would someone like to move that addition to the agenda? Mark, and second by Skylar. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Andy has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Just before we do that, I didn't recognize that vote. So Sandy?
No, sorry, it's an item, a question about the minutes.
Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead. Okay, no,
You want to move the motion first and then I'll
we'll
ask.
get, yeah, okay, perfect. We'll take care of that. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So we'll now move down to 5.1, approval of minutes of the previous meeting, May 23rd, 2023. You have a question, Sandy? Please go ahead with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if Justin Henry is there, but just want to make sure we close the loop on the item that's on the confidential. Is there anything else we need to do, you and me, in terms of that action?
Sorry, Justin isn't in the room right now.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I should have asked this at the agenda meeting. I'll take it up later.
Okay.
So just whether or not there's anything Brian and I still need to do to close the file on the work that's been done.
No, we can certainly follow up with that. Is there any questions of the minutes? Seeing none, is there a mover for the minutes? Hugh and George seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Business arising from the minutes? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. My own minutes here. So yes, we're going to back up here and we will do the presentation by Brad Glassman, manager of integrated watershed. And I apologize, Brad. I made it added to the agenda, they didn't follow my own agenda. So please come forward.
Okay, I'm easy to overlook. I appreciate that. Thanks for having us this morning. I'm here on behalf of our Integrated Watershed Management Unit, or as we refer to it, our Science and Stewardship Group, which you may have heard before. But science, of course, is the monitoring, the understanding of our surface and groundwater quality, our stream biology, our natural heritage and agricultural systems throughout the watershed. Stewardship is the implementation of best practices to help improve and protect our environment based on that science. So there's 6 points that I was just going to stress before we really get into the guts of the presentation. Within our unit, there's I guess a number of different things that we do, but it's certainly broader than just our unit. We take what we and others learn in our science to better our implementation efforts. We cannot do any of this in isolation. We collaborate with staff, academia, private sector, municipalities, community groups, federal, provincial government, ag groups, associations, anybody else that wants to be engaged in our programming. We try to utilize our GIS, our WSKI database, our agricultural software, and other information management systems as best we can to be innovative and progressive in the work we do. It's essential that we maintain very strong technical skills. I always liken it to, you have a problem with your furnace, you call the furnace guy, you don't try to do it yourselves. And I think a lot of people throughout the watershed now call our stewardship group to try to assist them in work that they're doing because of the ability that this group has. We strategize with others across the watershed, including municipalities, First Nations, farm groups, government agencies, and the public to work to improve and protect our watershed. And finally, we attempt to create unique methods to promote and inspire a healthy watershed through materials, awareness, exhibits, and other means. So with that, our presentation is going to take on a little bit of a different flavor today. I'm not sure if you've ever played or heard of the game called Kahoot. So we are going to engage you in a game to best display what we do as a group. Tatiana Lozier, who's our coordinator of stewardship, is here. She's going to play the role of host. I understand she's always wanted or always had the dream of being a game show host. So this is her chance to take that to the next level. And maybe, you know, who knows what happens after that. But, the game's going to be kind of, I think, unique in nature. I think you're going to have fun with it. We'll explain it. And once we're done, if there's any questions, hopefully we can entertain them at that time.
Emily, are you able to pull it up on the screen? So it's going to be on the screen, and I'm going to ask you to either use your cell phone or you can use your computer or your tablet. Find the login information here. I think my my game show host career starts and ends here today. So can you just start it? So if you go to kahoot.it, KAHOT, IT. Right, Emily, you'll have to be on the game back on that other screen, but everyone else's screen should look like this and you'll get a pin. So if you go to classic mode, Emily. So everyone's gonna type in the game pin. You're gonna choose a nickname as well. Or your own name.
Yep, top man.
It's right up top.
398.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, you think it's an ad? That's what
Oh, my God.
The way it's gonna work is you're gonna have 20 seconds to read and answer the question, and each question or each answer will have be color coded with a shape, and then on your devices that color and shape will appear, and you select which one you think is the correct answer.
Prizes.
There are no prizes. You just you'll get to stand number 1 on the podium at the end of the game. Are we? The scoring's based on how correct and how quickly you answer the questions. So if you know the answer, you want to be quick.
So far.
Daily.
Yes.
Yeah, it's starting to get your.
Get paid for this meeting.
Oh,
You
okay.
get extra assignments.
Yeah.
I think it's everyone.
In?
Are you in?
Thanks for listening either. Go ahead. Yes.
We're gonna continue.
Also use the honor system if people don't want to play on their devices.
Let's go ahead.
And up at the corner, Emily, there'll be like a next button for you to hit next there. So Brad gave a really quick overview of our programs and services, but these are the names and faces of our integrated watershed management unit. So we'll go through questions that relate to the programs and services, and then hopefully I'll add some fun facts for more information behind the questioning. And then I do have to thank our stewardship field assistant Tibor, who worked the last few days on putting this together for us. So I think we'll get started. So question number 1.
That's right.
So which of the following are names of the main river that flows through our watershed?
No, I heard that.
So I spoke to Sean up to like to,
Did we hit next? Emily? I'm just gonna mute Peter.
anything wrong with this, we will bring it back and we will redo it.
So the answer is all of the above. So the Thames River, Ardeshkan Zibi, Antler River are all names that are used locally today, but the rivers had different names over time. So recognizing the importance of all those that rely on the river. If you just hit next, sorry, Emily. The Thames River Clear Water Revival, ooh, Brian and Lead, brought together First Nations and next again, sorry, different levels of government, the CAs and community with a shared goal of a healthy Thames River. So from this initiative stemmed the Shared Waters Approach document, which guides water quality and quantity recommendations for the Thames River, and the Shared Waters Action Plan sets out how those recommendations will be implemented. The next question, please. So which species at risk birds are most reliant on prairie habitat and the insect food it supplies? And next again, please, Emily. So tall grass prairies are a habitat at risk in southwestern Ontario. Upper Thames does seed prairies as part of our restoration program. Our staff work with landowners for site visits, site prep, or we recommend site prep if they're doing it on their own. We work to source seed with our local nurseries to create native grass and wildflower mixtures. Weed control is really an important component of prairie seed establishment. So prairie seeds germinate much slower than weeds, so weeds will outcompete them. So again, we work with landowners on that establishment piece. And then once a prairie is established, burning is part of the maintenance and life cycle of a prairie, and Upper Thames does have a burn team. So question number 3, how many native trees and shrubs were planted and distributed through our private lands restoration program this spring?
Okay, I'll get this in, bye.
Just trees.
So it's actually closer to 40,000 trees total. So if we're just talking trees, between our large stock and our seedling planting, community forestry, we have a memorial tree planting program, and then we have 4 tree power programs that see trees being given to watershed residents in London, Stratford, St. Mary, and South. So what's the typical survival rate of our plantings on private lands? We do have a, oh, sorry, next, Emily. I heard a comment, it can't be that high. Yeah, so we actually have we've been very successful in the survival rates of our tree planting, because as part of the program, we do offer tree tending. So landowners have the opportunity to have a herbicide application as part of the tree planting program to suppress weeds. We have a plastic mulch applicator if your operation is such like organic farms that you can't be applying herbicide. And then we also encourage wood chips around our large stock plantings. We do advocate that maintenance piece as part of our programming, so that landowners are mowing between trees, between rows, especially while those trees are getting established. We do a survival assessment for all of our seedling planting sites. And then we also hire a tree planting crew each year that help ensure that high quality of planting right from the get-go. Which tree species at risk do we support using planting? So what's the butternut? So the butternut is a species at risk due to the butternut canker, which is a fungal disease. So Upper Thames works closely with the Forest Gene Conservation Association to host a genetic archive of these trees. So a butternut twig is grafted to a black walnut. And these trees will be potentially tolerant to the canker and will cross-pollinate and produce viable seed. So there's actually a picture of some of our older trees producing seed, so that any of the seedlings will have a greater tolerance to the canker. Which of the following is not considered an invasive species in Ontario?
Like pen.
Take multiple.
So actually Norway spruce is one of the trees that we commonly plant as part of our tree planting program. The rest are invasive species. So invasive species threaten biodiversity and outcompete our native species. Not on the list, but a few that we are trying to tackle is Japanese knotweed and Phragmites. So our forestry staff works with our municipal partners and landowners to control invasive species. Our staff go out on site visits to ID invasive species and provide advice on controlling them. And we have certainly seen an increasing number of calls from landowners and so something that we'll be continuing to investigate as part of our overall programming. How often does Upper Thames produce watershed report cards? It is every 5 years, and we put out the report card not just to highlight the information and the current conditions of each of our sub-watersheds, but we also utilize the information within the report cards to better understand watershed conditions as we identify areas to protect or issues to address, and then actions to best address those issues. So the concentration of what is used alongside nitrate and nitrite levels as an indicator of human impacts in the report cards. And a follow-up question to that, which are the two oldest surface water quality sites that Upper Thames monitors?
You don't have to stop. It better be too quick.
So Upper Thames started working as part of PWQMN in the 1960s. So some of our oldest sites are almost 60 years old now, starting in 1964. There are 28 sites across the watershed. They're visited 3 times a year. So either to collect water samples or to download our water level loggers. This program provides a robust long-term data set for the Upper Thames. The data is not only used by our staff through our report cards, but also for our partners, researchers, students to identify long-term trends in water quality across the watershed. And this spring, the water quality sampling frequency increased under the direction of MECP, and 3 wells that were exhibiting, because 3 wells were exhibiting evidence of human impacts. So results showing that chloride concentrations are increasing, which is one of the indicators that's more easily influenced by human activity. So attributed to the application of road salts as our urban footprint is increasing. Which endangered species of turtle has the bulk of its Canadian population in the Thames River?
Oh, which one?
So it is the spiny softshell. So our species at risk team has been studying and aiding in the recovery of the spiny softshell for over 25 years. Predation and people result in a high mortality. So the species at risk team works tirelessly this time of year to collect eggs, incubate those eggs, and release them back to where they came from, which increases the likeliness of survival and increasing the population. So another species at risk question, which of the following are species at risk in the Thames River watershed? Perfect, it is all of the above. So our aquatic biologist and crew work to identify fish species throughout the watershed this time of year. So 50+ species have been monitored since 2018 or identified since 2018. And then $500,000 has been funded for monitoring and protecting species at risk, many of which are threatened by excess sedimentation. So funding for projects that promote a reduction of sediment in the watercourses has been carried out through this funding. So things like tree planting, cover crops, wetland creation, in-stream restoration. So it's really a great opportunity to complement the science and stewardship side of our unit. And much like a lot of the data we collect, it's shared amongst our partners. And along the lines of stewardship, what is the name of Upper Thames One Window Stewardship Services Program? Clean Water Program. And what I mean by one-stop shop is really just that our staff conduct site visits, provide technical advice on site, and through the planning process, we aid in the delivery of projects, and we provide cost sharing for a range of projects that help improve water quality within the watershed. The program began in 2001 and has funded more than 3,000 projects. How many constructed wetlands did Upper Thames create thanks to the Ontario Land Trust Alliance funding this past year, 2022? So it was 11. So typically we complete a handful of projects, but through this funding, we were able to increase the delivery of wetland projects. We've seen an increase in the inquiry around constructed wetlands, and it is one of the more expensive projects for our landowners to complete. So through funding such as the one by the Ontario Land Trust Alliance, it helps us just get more projects in the ground. And again, we provide the technical advice on wetland design and planting afterwards. So really seeing that process through an entirety. Yes.
Does the stormwater management pond qualify?
No, so really through our programming, we're really looking at more like land retirement, agricultural fields, part of wetland. And I think there's
I was way off in that last question.
So which of the following best management practices are showcased on Upper Thames Thorndale Demonstration Forum? If you're on the tour, hopefully covered all of these topics, or none of these topics, or one or two of these topics. So it is all of the above. Maybe a bit of a trick question for those of you that were out there, because there wasn't cover crops on the field when you were out there, but it is something that we're gonna be promoting as part of that farm. So it is an Upper Thames property, aimed to be a one-stop shop to promote best management practices, not only how they work environmentally, but also how they work as part of that land management piece with the tenant farmer. There is a edge of field monitoring component, so looking at water quality and quantity differences between the drainage features on the farm, soil health, crop yield, and farmability, again, around those features. So this field is a little bit more complex than some of our other edge of field monitoring stations. And we also have a series of subwatershed outlets in which we do event-based sampling. So trying to create linkages between changes in water quality to best management practices being implemented on the ground. And with the majority of our sediment and nutrients being lost in runoff within our watershed during the fall and winter months, we work with our partners, whether that's OMAFRA, Environment Canada, Ag Canada, or other ag industry, to better understand what's happening on the landscape as it relates to water quality. And our last question, where does mapping and information come from to support GIS and our GIS staff? All of the above. And so all of those sources help to feed into and provide information for our GIS staff. So there's imagery that's updated every 5 years, partnerships with the province and municipalities to share data with Upper Thames and Upper Thames sharing data, our field staff going out to collect data, and then just to be able to better manipulate and interpret the data that's collected, and our staff can continue to map different characteristics within our watershed. And everyone is always jealous of the quality of maps they bring out to site visits. So like a lot of information goes into creating the maps that we do have here at the authority.
Oh, hi, Ladonna, it's Peter Cuddy. How are you? Good, thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Where's TH?
However, the board member that did do the best was Tyler, so. So with that, we hope that you have a little bit of better understanding of some of the things we do within our group. And if there's, as Tatiana said, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to try to entertain them.
And you have a number of staff who can also answer questions if I can.
Any questions from the board? I just want to thank you. That was a great, fun, interactive thing, and I hope we've learned a lot. And definitely know that we don't know everything, right? So.
All right, thank you.
Certainly, I'm glad that was added to the agenda. That was. So we will move now down to 5.2, business rising from the minutes. I don't believe there is any. And then we do not have any correspondence. 5.3. So now we'll move into 6 report consideration. The first one is 6.1, 20-year flood capital control program. And just want to note that this highlights almost $60 million in flood capital repairs over the next 20 years. This report is provided by staff annually, is consistent with past reports. I will be asking, oh, sorry. I need to read that part. Yeah, so this is an ongoing item that is presented every year to the board. Obviously, the numbers are big, but as time goes by, hopefully we will see continued support from our federal partners to make sure that these are continue to happen. At one time, the province funded 75%. We're certainly not at that level, or sorry, the federal and provincial governments funded 75% of this, but we're certainly not at that level anymore. But we continue to have good support from those partners. Is there anything you would like to highlight, Tracy?
Sure, through the chair, I'd just like to highlight the WECI program, just a reminder that it's a 50-50 split amongst funding for the program between the province and then the local municipalities. And it's a $5 million contribution annually from the province. As you can do, look at the age of our structures and think about the structures built throughout the province of Ontario. Many were built after Hurricane Hazel in the 50s, 60s, so all are getting older. Conservation Ontario is really trying to advocate for conservation authorities to the province to increase that amount of funding as a base amount. And also to extend the timeline in which those funds can be used. Again, as major maintenance projects and any construction projects happen, I think we all realize they do take a little bit longer to get going and longer to complete. So to have some flexibility in how those funds are allotted is certainly something that Conservation Ontario is really trying to promote to the province. Certainly, if you have any questions, I know Chris Tasker is here as well as Dave Charles at the back of the room to answer questions about the report.
Excellent. Are there any questions from the board?
Sandy?
Oh, yeah, Sandy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to confirm, so when the municipal share is allocated, it's only to the benefiting municipality or municipalities, not to the entire watershed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Chris might be
Okay.
want to expand on that because
There is one, if I may, Mr. Chair, there's one nuance to that, and that's our flow augmentation reservoirs at Wildwood and Pittock have a component of their funding which is allocated across the entire watershed. It's only a few percent though.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, and it may be premature, but WECI is not, I guess it's a specific program. It kind of falls outside of the, well, let me back up. It would be a category 1, wouldn't it? So it wouldn't require a separate agreement outside when we go into 2024 and beyond for budgeting?
yes, through the chair, that's correct.
Okay,
It is a category 1 program and levy is applied.
okay, thank you.
And I believe you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, maybe this is a question to staff. It's very similar. I just want to have a better understanding about our budget. So this is for 2023 and in particular Schedule B. Just want to make sure I understand that the studies, safety projects and repair projects are for that year. Schedule D.
Chris, do you want to answer?
So Schedule D, if I may, is the schedule from the agreement that we enter into with WECI. And so that sets us up for, well, based on our applications, which were approved in your in a previous meeting. Now they're in the agreement, which came in just as we were preparing this report, middle of June, and sets us up for budget discussions, but we have to have started those the year before, basically, right? Because it affects this year and carries over until March of next year. Did I?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And so what is the process going forward then for next year? Where do we start with the budget?
The same process that we've gone through.
Okay, and is it done through like on a yearly basis?
Yeah, so if I'm right, we would, staff would identify capital projects that need to be, I'm sure you have a long-term capital plan, which we've seen in this.
We use-
report. Identify those projects and make sure that they come, apply for funding based on need of those and available funds from municipalities, correct?
So the 20-year capital plan is used to set us up for those subsequent applications and discussions with municipalities as we're moving into and preparing for those budgets.
Right, and I know with the city of London, we do a 4-year budget, and I'm just trying to understand how that 4-year budget works as it aligns with what Upper Thames does here on a yearly basis. Just trying to pull the two together.
The only thing I can mention there is that we work with the staff. And his staff.
And so we give them numbers on an ongoing basis, like 4 years out, especially when they are preparing their 4-year budgets. So our current contacts right now are Monica McViker and Shauna Chambers. So we meet with them regularly to keep them abreast of all the projects that are coming. Always forward.
That answer your question?
I guess I can just add one thing for you.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time
Yeah,
hearing.
I can add one thing for you. So when you vote on the budget, there is a capital component that you're voting outside of the regular budget. So the capital vote that you that you have, that falls, like that incorporates these capital.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure these numbers align with what we do as a city going forward and how we incorporate it and just trying to bring the, because there's two processes here, trying to bring them together.
I'm sure with, because the municipalities are on the hook for the other 50%, the staff do a lot of consultation and work well with our municipalities to make sure that they align with the goals of the municipality as well. Jim, please.
Thank you, through the chair. I see the importance of having this 20-year capital plan because it allows you to plan for that capital over years. I see the big question mark is if it's went from 75 to 50%, what happens 4 years from now if it goes from 50 to 40 or 50 to 20, and then the impact of what that has on the budget. So I think it's a real good tool, but it's important to realize that it's still contingent on that 50% funding. And as that changes, then it really impacts the different municipalities.
Yeah, so far it's been good that we've seen consistent funding and a commitment to that. The 75% I was talking about is very historical when the province and federal government were giving out grants for a lot of things. And so as you see over time, they provide less and less, which we all know. And so it's important that we keep advocating the importance of their role within the overall flood control nature of Ontario. Yes, please.
If I could just add to that, Mr. Chair. It's important to understand that our responsibility is to maintain our structures in a safe manner. The funding that is provided through WECI is important for us to be able to do that, but it is not contingent on us doing that work. There are many projects which are not WECI eligible. There are many projects which are not WECI supported because they don't rank high enough, but we still have that responsibility to undertake that work. So it's our plans to do the work are not necessarily, it's a factor, but not necessarily contingent on that funding being there. We do the best that we can to get that funding when it's available, but it is important to recognize that it's up to us and this board to make decisions about what needs to be done and when and how to fund it through municipal levy if those other funding sources are not there.
It's just a great example of how staff tried to mitigate the cost through grants for the municipalities. Anna, please.
Yeah, through the chair, I really appreciate that answer because that was what I was trying to get a better understanding with Schedule D, the budget. So just an example, Springbank Dam is not in the schedule, but it doesn't probably meet the requirements of the WECI funding, but it's still the responsibility of the CA to maintain and take care of it. And that, so have I got that right?
If I may, I'll try my best to work my way through that. So Springbank Dam is owned by the municipality. We have had past involvement with maintaining that particular structure, but the current projects that are going on at Springbank Dam are municipally driven projects. So because we're not going after the funding, we can't get WECI funding for this particular project. Does that?
Yeah, that's great.
Paul, please.
Yeah, my question through you, Mr. Chair, to staff is specifically about the Umbro and the Harrington dams. And on attachment number 1, there's figures put in there. Yep, but it may apply to other smaller dams as well. Attachment number 1, there's figures in there for work over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Potentially one or both of those dams could be removed at some point. So I'm just wondering, when you determine those numbers, what scope of work goes into making up those numbers? And if a dam is decommissioned, is any of that money available for the decommissioning? Or
If I may, very good question. We try not to inflate the total cost of the maintenance to include alternatives, basically. Maintaining the structure versus removal of the structure. We don't want to have both of those commingled in this. It would just double or make the total dollars larger. So the way we've approached that, and we discussed that, confirmed it again this year as we were going through the projects because of projects like the ones you were mentioning, is to continue to include our maintenance items in that list. But we have the EA processes and the background information, the project files, et cetera, that contain the information about the alternatives, decommissioning being the example. So in answer to the question there, would that money become available for decommissioning? Should we change to that? The simple answer is yes. You know, that money is planned and not yet budgeted for, like, because it's out there a ways. But yes, those where those monies are not needed for the repairs, then that would switch over for decommissioning type activities and that sort of thing. The one nuance there is as we get close to those, we need to budget for next year. So we've carried a project for starting some design work. The design work at this point in time, the current preferred alternative, although not yet confirmed, would be decommissioning. So it's assumed that that would be applied for that, but if it's not, it would very quickly evolve into something that could be a start on design for some of those needed repairs that have been put off pending the outcome of the EA.
That answers my question. Thanks, Chris.
Excellent. Any further questions of the report? Seeing none, is there anybody who would like to move the recommendations? You, second by Skylar. Discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. And we will now move on to item 6.2, administrative bylaw updates. Tracy.
Sure, through the chair. Thanks to Sandy, caught a couple minor spelling mistakes, electronic instead of, or it needs to be replaced, the name electron. And just a couple of capitalization errors that we'll fix. Certainly, I wanted to give a big thank you to Michelle, because Michelle is instrumental in making sure that our admin bylaws get updated and recognizes board practices, both current and past boards, and how we've kind of evolved with our bylaws over time. So thank you, Michelle. As well, just wanted to give a little bit of background to the changes that are outlined in the report. One of the larger changes is recognizing the Non-for-Profit Corporations Act. Several legislative changes and amendments as a result of the Conservation Authorities Act and regulations. Some that are proclaimed July 1st. So we've taken the approach to proclaim our effective date for this updated bylaw to be July 1st to align with that legislative change as well. And certainly recognize that Conservation Ontario provides some basis and recommendations on including in administrative bylaws in a template type document. So we use that to apply to our bylaw. And some of you may recall that Nigel Bellchamber did a comprehensive review of our bylaw back in March last year. So we feel that we've got things in pretty good shape for how we operate as a board, recognizing each conservation authority might have slightly different nuances in how they run their executive committee or their full board versus their separate committees. So just a few of those highlights to mention to you here, as well as it'd be helpful, and I think there might be a motion towards this and making one slight adjustment to our agenda items so that we can report back regularly on committees.
Thank you. Yep. So I will ask for questions, and then if there is a motion to amend, then we can deal with that when we have a motion on the floor. Is there any questions of the report? See.
Not a question, but a comment. I just want to thank staff for the way it was presented with the different colors of the additions and the things that were being removed were lines drawn through. And quite often when you see these documents and the changes, it's hard to understand what's being added and what's being taken out. So just the format I found really well put together and really easy to understand what was going in and what was replacing. Thanks for that.
No problem. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Skylar? Anna, please. Discussion. Mark, I believe you may have an amendment.
If you wanted it here or not. Yeah, there was some discussion about adding a heading to section 4.2 after the 4.2.8. Are titled reports from committees, and further that all headings would then therefore be renumbered accordingly. The purpose would be to add a place in the agenda where the hearings committee and finance and audit committee meetings minutes can be placed on the agenda so that the board is aware of the proceedings without having to bring in a special report every time.
Seconder for the amendment, Paul. The discussion on the amendment. Yeah, this is the move just to make it more transparent and easy for everybody to find the information from the boards and committees and make sure that, as Paul has mentioned, discussion that maybe get more people interested and know what's going on and to participate in that as well in future dates once everybody knows what's happening. So fully supportive of this amendment. Any more discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? That is carried.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Oh, no, sorry. And now for the amended motion. Does anybody want the amended motion, which is the recommendation that the board of directors approves the amendment of administrative bylaws update June 11th, 2023, effective July 1st, 2023, for the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, and that a heading be added to section 4.2 after 4.2.8 titled reports from committees, and that further that all headings after the renumbered accordingly. Discussion on the. We already moved and seconded. This is on the and Skylar, you have a comment?
Are the edits that Sandy looked for and captured in this motion? Okay, good.
Yes, I believe so, under just administrative update for typos.
Yep.
Any further discussion on the amended motion? Mark, please.
Yeah, just on the motion itself, I noticed that there's a way that if somebody from the agricultural field is added to the committee, that would partake in that. But are we still possibly getting somebody from Strathroy area added to the committee or not? And if so, would that require another amendment to the?
Interesting.
Yes, through the chair. What Mark is speaking about is Strathroy Caradoc have, as a council, recommended that they wanted to join the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority for the area within their municipality that is within our watershed. The next step is for the municipality to call a meeting to vote on joining as a membership. So we're waiting that next step. I was speaking with Jennifer Huff, who has been leading that just a couple months ago. And with the changeover of council, she just wanted a little bit more time to get them accustomed to their council proceedings before bringing that meeting forward. But that is something that they're wishing to pursue because the area of Strathroy Caradoc are not members within our watershed, and in our order of council, they're specifically excluded. So they want to rectify that.
Yes, I believe it would definitely require a bylaw amendment at that time. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will now move on to 6.3, proposed directions to staff, barrier removal discussion paper. Brad Glasgow. Is there any questions of the report? This was brought on by Skylar's notice in motion at last meeting. So this is how we're going to deal with this. We do have a motion to direct staff to present a discussion paper to the board regarding barriers for removal. And so I will open the floor to any questions from the board. Oh, okay. Skylar, would you like to move the motion? Is there a seconder for the motion? Excellent. Discussion. Adam.
Thanks for entertaining these two motions. I just wanted to mention or provide further clarification. I'm just interested in having a discussion on both of the following items. But also I don't expect them speedily. As on the last item on this agenda, I can see you guys have a lot of work to do, so there's no timeline from me on this. So I just wanted to provide that clarification. Just something to consider for future discussion.
Excellent, and I thank you for bringing it forward, and I think it's a great a way to educate the board and as well as provide options. And I know Brad's team will be able to bring that forward when it's available, and we will discuss that then. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. We'll now move to 6.4, which is the proposed direction of staff renewable energy generation, which is much in the same way. Brought forward through a notice of motion from Skylar, and so Skylar, I'll ask if you'd like to move. Absolutely, moved by Skylar, and a seconder for the motion. George. Discussion. On that. Dean.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess further to the motion presented, I would be interested to find out more about this subject, and particularly I would be interested in staff's comments as far as costs are concerned, like design, maintain, operate. There would be capital costs and maintenance costs involved, so I'd be interested to see what those costs are and how that fits into our budgeting process as well as our asset management plan overall. These would be important pieces of information to have staff report on back to the board when they make their presentation. Thank you.
Absolutely, Hugh.
But this will be something done well in the future, right? Because at the moment, I don't see there'd be much time to be able to bring a report of this magnitude back within until the MOUs and everything else are done, right?
I do see this as longer term direction as far as ensuring that everything is considered when things take shape. Perhaps Skylar, you can allude a little bit more to your goals of your motion.
Sure, yeah, again, I have no timeline on this, so whenever staff have a free moment, again, recognizing that they're very busy with lots of changes that have happened. But I'm just interested in this because I know that Fanshawe Dam does have some renewable generation, and I just, again, I'm curious to see what other properties would be available and happy to understand the full costing of it. So no rush for me, but just something looking forward when we're doing asset management planning.
Tracy.
Through the chair, exactly what you're mentioning. We are doing asset management planning. We are working on our lands management strategy and operation plans on our dams, as well as, how this all fits in with our new categories of programs and services. So certainly thinking bigger picture, this is something that as an organization, we see ourselves intimately involved in building resiliency for climate change and looking at not only hydroelectric power that can be developed, but also our sustainable transportation. We have a green fleet strategy. We have a green energy built into this building, for example. But again, as we go through our lands and facilities, are there opportunities to explore other options for how we can incorporate that or retrofit if it's feasible, if the life cycle and the age of the structure, maybe it's not feasible, but doing replacements in our long-term planning. How can we potentially incorporate that? Again, where it's feasible and it makes dollars and cents to do so. So lots of projects where we think we can kind of build this in to, again, kind of echo that messaging that we want to lead by example and do our part when it comes to climate change adaptations. Appreciate that.
And last comment, and you just reminded me, I was hoping that the board would be interested in providing this direction as well, again, so that if possible, we have what's the word, irons in the fire. So right now, I don't think that there's very many good financial incentives to be doing renewable energy. I could be wrong. But in the future, if there comes an opportunity, usually the locations that have projects already identified and somewhat rough sketched out, make it into a queue first. So again, if it doesn't make financial sense, absolutely not, doesn't make sense. But if we have some potential projects ready to go, if there is change in funding, I think that's an exciting opportunity to be ready for it.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I'm happy to support this. I think as a board, we need to provide staff with direction on where we would like to see the organization go. And certainly it fits within our realm of responsibility and our goals to be able to make sure that we are responsible and see where there's options available in the future. One of the hardest things I found is when we have plans, we have making plans for the future with policy, whatever organization you're with, is where's that cutoff point where we say this is the direction we're going and this is where it gets implemented. So this is where it starts. It have direction to staff to look at it, and then they can come back and board can make a decision on how far we want to go and what that looks like. So certainly appreciate the motion coming forward. So any further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see this as extremely important, but I see it as a couple of the tools in that, I mean, I think probably initially, and you just mentioned it, you do have further your fleet going green. So it's that entire energy efficiency and meeting climate change and net carbon zero over time. So there probably is certain things now that we're not aware of that you are already on your way, and maybe, you know, because there's all kinds of different points, but maybe we should get a brief report, which you already had, which you touched on, is for our, you know, net zero carbon emissions over the next 20 years. We're already into this, and this is what we're looking at, something, and we also want to look at this. So that's what I'm hearing. I think it's all part and parcel of a bigger picture.
The thing where these guide is, I think as a board, we're probably moving towards a new strategic plan process. And so these are good thought processes to go through and what that can incorporate. And so staff have a clear direction when they're starting to put that together. And so we don't lose sight of what we want to consider our strategic plan to look like going forward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 6.5 POA officer designation. And I will certainly, if the vote is successful, I'll welcome one. No. Is there any questions of the report? No. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Anna, seconded by Harsh. Discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. And welcome, Elijah. Well, welcome, and certainly glad to have you as part of the team, and certainly an important role to make sure that our conservation areas are safe and well taken care of. Oh, we will now move on to reports. Oh, sorry, Mark. Sorry.
First of all, we don't have to make a motion on that item at all, or did we? I missed it. Okay, I must have just missed it, sorry. I just want to confirm that Elijah Wilson is still assistant superintendent at the conservation area. That role doesn't change.
Yeah. Damien, you want to speak to that?
So what he's still the assistant superintendent at the conservation area?
Yeah, he's been there since the 23rd of May is when he started. He came down from Soggy Bluffs. A 2-week turnaround from there as well. He's currently the assistant there.
Now his provincial offenses officer, so he can do his job fully. There are no reports in camera. Reports for information. 8.1 administration enforcement section 8 status report. I will ask Jenna to provide a brief overview of the report if you'd like to add anything to her report.
Sure, I'm happy to speak to it. So this is our regular monthly section 28 report. It comes to you each month, and it's the table that's attached provides a listing of all of the permits in the previous month. So all of our permits from May 1st to May 31st are included in that permit table. And at your April meeting, I believe there was a motion passed asking for more information to be included in this report about permits that are in progress. So ones that we've received applications for, or we've been working with applicants on completing their applications, but haven't yet issued a permit. So we have tried to capture some more information. I have a few concerns about including too much information about permits that are in progress. I guess similar to a building permit, you can't go to any public reports, any municipal public reports where you would see a listing of building permits that are in progress. So I guess I view this kind of similarly to that. So I've provided this information in a tally format based on each municipality in our watershed. And actually, we had some concerns from some of our regulations officers for the City of London about the number of permits in progress for the city as compared to other municipalities in the watershed. But I think it really reflects the way our staffing is divided. So we divide our regulations staff equally between both the City of London and the rest of the watershed. So we have 2 regulations officers assigned to the City of London and 2 that are assigned to the rest of the watershed. So when you look at the 32 permits that are in progress, we have 17 that are in progress in the City of London and the remainder in the rest of the watershed. So it sort of reflects the balance of workload throughout our watershed, and it makes sense from my perspective. So we have broken it down by municipality. You'll see each of our other municipalities in the watershed have 1 or 2 in progress, and then the city has 17. And I think it's a good start. We're looking to build some more information into the report for you that may include the type of application that's been applied for. So broken down a little bit further in terms of types of permits that are being applied for, and maybe the length of time when we receive the application. So that you have a sense of kind of timing. So we'll work to try and include more details in this permits in progress report as we move forward on our monthly reports.
So, questions of the report? I see Sandy and then Mark. Sandy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Jenna. So in terms of continuously improving this report, what sort of timeline do you have in mind?
Yeah, through you, Chair, to Sandy, I think we'll plan to try and bring some more information back in the August report. Definitely looking to break down the table a little bit further based on type of application, and we'll look at trying to include more information about timing as well in there. But yeah, definitely try to build each month on what we're including.
Okay, well, also you'd be looking at information about how long particular applications been in the queue, so to speak. Will that also be something, again, not each individual, but say out of the 17 for London, X number were 2020, X number were 2021, et cetera? Is that something you're envisioning?
Yeah, through you, Chair, to Sandy. Yes, I think that's something we're going to try and include more information about. And our regulation staff are anxious for the board to know about all of the work that they're doing. So we're thinking of adding more information about the environmental assessments that our regulation staff review, because there's quite a lot of those and they take a fair amount of staff time. So just trying to build more information into our monthly reports that kind of captures the sort of total workload and all of the things that our reg staff that are working on each month.
Right, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised that most of these are considered complex under how we categorize things. Final question, Mr. Chair, through you to Jenna, help me with the arithmetic. Out of the 32 in progress, sorry, there's 32 in progress. That's a total of how many? Because again, I want to stress, I think most of the work that we do gets done fairly quickly. And we get a lot of applications, so it's 32 out of how many, roughly?
All right, Sandy, you mean how many have been applied for this year, or?
Well, I mean, the report says number of permits in progress, 32. So it's over some period of time, those 32 were received. So during that period of time, there would have been a lot more than 32 applications that were received. So Is it 10% of the workload, 5%, 1% of the workload roughly?
Okay, through you, Chair, to Sandy, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can look to include that information in a future report.
Yeah,
Like
again,
yeah, we know the total number for 2023, but I have to look back at our 2022 and 2021 numbers to really get.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. My assumption is some of these are complex enough where they came in prior to 2023. But again, to me, it's the order of magnitude. And my hunch is it's very few don't get done within the time period, because we've received reports that, a good number of our applications are processed within the timelines we set and the set by Conservation Ontario. So that, I think, is worth communicating out to our municipal partners as well as those in the development and home building industry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sandy. Mark, you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I get through to Jenna as well. I see that in 2023, you've issued 84 permits, so it shows that you've been busy, but what I'm asking about is the 10 notices of violations that have been sent out. Are some of these very significant, or some of these maybe, oh gee, we just didn't know that we had to go through UTRCA for this building permit, or whatever the scenario might be?
I would say, sorry, through you, Chair, that it's a combination of both, Mark. So some that are significant that we're moving forward and pressing charges on, and others where we're just trying to work with the applicant to either restore or issue a retroactive permit based on what's happened.
I'm just gonna say, so many people are playing by the rules that it's a shame that a few people may come in and completely play against the rules, so to speak, and do significant, for lack of a better term, damage to the watershed without realizing what they're doing, even if it's simply water in, water out kind of a scenario where they're hoarding water.
Yeah, we certainly have a role to play with that, as well as promoting to all our residents to make sure that, just as you do with building departments, before you do anything, go in, consultation is always offered. And so make sure that you take either the building department and the conservation authority as well up on that offer, to be able to make sure that it's much easier to go do things right the first time than have to deal, especially for staff as well. All violations are, I'm sure, are very tedious, as much like by law enforcement as well. So we can all save money by just doing things the right way the first time.
Oh, another question through you, a follow-up to Mark's question. The 10 violations so far this year, is that typical of the first 5 months of the year, or is that up or down, or?
I think that's a difficult question to answer. I think we've definitely seen an increase in violations over the last few years. I think with all of the proposed changes that the provincial government's been making to the Conservation Authorities Act and our role with our regulatory authority, there's a lot of confusion about what conservation authorities do and regulate. And so some of it may be naive in terms of just not understanding what approvals are required. But I think there's a lot of things that are happening because they believe that the provincial government now thinks they can do it and don't require provincial or conservation authority approval. So yeah, I would say we're definitely seeing an increase in the number of violations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and through you, just to staff, thank you for the report. I think our Section 28 reporting is getting better, and it's good to know that we're still trying to improve upon it. I do have a question around the cloud permit, the new IT pilot project that we could be looking into. Just would like to know a little bit more about our the IT process that we use and why we are looking at cloud permit, and would all municipalities need to be part of the cloud permit, and just wanting to know a little bit more where we're going with our permit process.
Sure. Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, it's an interesting question. There's been a number of our municipalities, and we've been identified by Conservation Ontario as one of the conservation authorities where we do have a lot of our municipalities that are already participating in the cloud permit program. But they are our rural municipalities. The city of London is not part of cloud permit. So it's an interesting dilemma for us in terms of whether we try and embrace it or not. Our staff already use cloud permit, so we do have login information, and so we try and support our municipalities that are using the cloud permit software from our end. So we are trying to use the software as an advisory agency. But it is an expensive piece of software to invest in, particularly if not all of our municipalities are participating in it. So Conservation Ontario has been exploring it for conservation authorities throughout the provinces as maybe a combined tool that we could get sort of a group pricing on, that a number of conservation authorities could use that would reduce the single cost that it would cost for a single CA to use it. So it's all in just the planning stages right now. So Conservation Ontario has been sort of exploring this pilot program, and they've targeted our authority as one of the ones they'd be interested in piloting it with, just because so many of our municipalities are already using it.
And through the pilot project, since we already use cloud, is that more or less why we're being asked to do the pilot project? Or
so we're not using it as a tool for ourselves. Our municipalities are using it as a tool. So we have login information to go in and download applications and provide status updates on applications through our municipalities. So our staff have login information through our municipalities to access their cloud permit software, but we're not actually using it ourselves just yet.
thanks for that clarification. I'm not a techie person, so I need all the details. I really appreciate it. I just find it quite interesting and how productive it is. It will be interesting to see moves forward. Also, I guess anyone that does have concerns with that permit process, usually through you, Chair, it would go to staff with comments, concerns. Who would be the staff people that we could recommend? 2 people that have concerns with their permit process?
So I think the current direction through your chair is to go through Tracy first for inquiries, and then it will likely come to me and I can distribute to whoever the staff person is that's leading a file. But we certainly welcome if you are receiving questions or concerns to come forward and ask staff about it. Our staff are always available to respond to questions about individual applications, whether that's to our board members or to the applicants themselves. So we encourage people to reach out if they have concerns about timelines or the status of their application.
Good to know, and thanks for being there, and thanks again for the report.
Skylar.
You and through the chair, I'm just wondering, is this a significant time suck for staff, or was this like somewhat easy to do? Because I am cognizant of it having to do this monthly, and if it is a significant burden on staff, I personally would consider doing it quarterly, but I'm just interested in hearing how much work is to go into it.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to Skylar. We're not finding it too bad, especially in this tally format. I think it will be actually quite simple for us to pull that information together. So we're already pulling the table of permits together that have been issued, so that the tally chart is not difficult to do.
I would encourage anybody on the board or anybody watching, if there's information they want to see in the report, I would forward that to staff, keeping in mind they may or may not be able to accommodate that depending on privacy legislation, the way that the permits work, but at least it would be known that that's the information that would be most useful to the board. So it can be accommodated and staff can try to incorporate that later on. So I second Anna's view that communication is important. Two-way communication to make sure that if there is an issue, it's identified to staff as soon as possible so they try to rectify that, and we have good communication go back and forth with their applicants. Yeah, and that way we do not. It's easier to fix the problem at the beginning than not, and that way these applications can move forward as fast as possible. The remover for the report. Oh, sorry, Jim.
I just had one question. I'm sure Jenna can try to answer that. And I think most of us sitting around this table, if we hear about something, it's probably something related to these 32 reports. So I know you can't put a lot of information out there, but is it possible maybe each one is independent, so maybe there's 32 good reasons why they're not there, each one has its own reason? Or is there 2 or 3 main things? You know, you could be waiting on a report from somebody else, that's why it's being delayed. Or maybe it's encroachment and floodplain. I mean, there may be just 2 or 3 generalities that, and maybe it's all, I have no idea. I guess that would be probably important for, as a board member, to know that there's 3 topics that are generally to learn more about or whatever. And I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I mean, I think we can, and I've spoken in the past in some of my reports, sort of generally what delays permit applications. I think to try and include that in the monthly report for each permit that's in progress will be time consuming for staff to try and do. So, you know, we're recording when permit applications are coming in, so we have a good handle. And as I said, it's easy to kind of tally those numbers up. But to sort of dig down into the reasons behind delays is going to create more challenges in terms of, just communicating with staff and trying to get the reason for each individual permit. So I think that will be more time consuming to try and collect that information. And that's where I would encourage people that are concerned to reach out individually to staff about applications.
Certainly, and we do receive a yearly report as well that has more in-depth information. And so I'm sure staff can infer some generalities over the year to maybe include that.
I think I heard Jenna, she gave me the answer to the question I wanted. It would be problems. So each one of those 32 has its own little areas of issues. So there's not 2 or 3 reoccurring issues. So fair enough.
Further questions? I'll ask again for a mover. George, Skylar seconded. Discussion on the report. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We'll now go down to 8.2 deferred revenue. And this report is being provided as a follow-up to the questions that rose at the last meeting. Just information report to help educate our new members. And Christine is here for any questions that you may have. Tracy, did you want to?
Yes, through the chair, I was just going to say, you know, I know Christine always has lots of examples of how we apply deferred capital. So that can be very specified amounts, but then even operationally, how that is. So I just wanted everyone to also keep in mind that as we move forward into 2024, we will be categorizing our deferred amounts as well to make sure that those amounts stay with either category 1, category 2, or category 3 programs and services. So certainly a transition year as we move forward.
Questions of the report? Sandy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess one of the things I thought I heard members concerned about was the significant difference between budget and actual for the levy component. And my understanding is twofold. One, budget is a forecast, and hitting the exact number is often hard. I'm sure all members find that in their own city budgets. The other is that we levy really on a watershed basis, just like municipality levies or taxes on a citywide basis, and that monies are used collectively rather than targeted, so to speak. So through you to staff, is that pretty much a fair analysis of ours? And perhaps if you want to give some specific examples of operating levy and how that's applied year over year, might be helpful to members.
Christine, could you provide an example?
Sure. So we levy our operating levy globally, but we know how much of those slices of levy need to go to certain programs or units. Within each of those programs or units, there can be some fluctuation over the course of the year, as Sandy said, between what you planned to deliver and what you can deliver from a timing perspective, or a very good example is if other funding becomes available in the course of the year, then you're not going to spend the levy that was attributed to your program. We had the federal program grant, it was 240,000 dropped in our lap last August. Well, that didn't require us to spend about $150,000 worth of levy that we otherwise would have. So that little pot of money has stayed available to use in the future. Equally, we had the regulations drop on us. We would have planned to do land inventory work through 2023, started 2024. We knew that we would need some resources to do that. So we were able to hive off little pots of revenue to hold back last year to use it this year. And all of this has been attributed to programs in 2024. Let's hope we use it all, because we have a lot of work to do in 2024, 2023, and 2024. So yes, the distribution of levy in the past or up to this year has been predicated on what programs in what units need levy support. From 2024, because we have the categorization of programs to approach our levy with, that distribution of levy will change for 2024. Absolutely right. Did that answer your question, Sandy?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
I think from a municipal standpoint, we all know that, budgets are estimates, and then throughout the year, things happen, and sometimes there's surpluses. The good news is the the funds are there for the next year. And so we'll be either paying one way or the other, whether it's using deferred revenue from the previous year, or we're going to be asking for more levy that year. The funds are just not disappearing, and they're certainly being used for the authority's goals. Any further questions? Seeing none, can I have a mover to accept the report? Paul, seconded by Debbie. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 8.4, project status update. And so this is just a good reference for a tool for members to be aware of the status of the ongoing projects. Also helpful.
Yes,
Oh, we did.
quarterly progress.
Absolutely. Got too excited about them. So, yes, sorry. Services. Yeah, this is the last latest progress report, and I'll turn it over to Tracy for any notes on this.
Thank you through the chair. Just to highlight that this is the fifth such report. In this time, though, we typically would have attached our inventory of programs and services as we were making amendments. Sometimes those amendments were based on feedback from our municipal partners. Sometimes it was refinement of budgeting processes, either our approved budget or amended budget as we progress through the years. Again, this is to set us up for the new process moving forward, January 1st, 2024. And we'll have one more of these quarterly reports in October and to submit to the province. But in this case, there was really no additional information or changes made to the full inventory, the colored sheets that you would have seen attached in the past. But anticipate in October that those will be updated again with probably our draft 2024 budget numbers at that time. So with that, this information gets posted to our website as well when we submit to the province for July 1st.
Excellent, thank you. Is there any questions? Seeing none, is there a mover to receive the report? Arj and George for a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now we'll go to 8.4 project status updates, and I will turn that right over to Tracy for comment.
Sure, through the chair. Really want to provide this project summary for all of our board reports. You see the report back items, as well as what what projects we're undertaking to meet our legislative requirements. As you can see, there's a lot going on, but indicating as well when we're building out our timeline for reports back to the board. We know that this is our best guess at this time, so there may be some refinement as we move through the year. And again, as mentioned with the renewable energy projects, some of that will be built into these other broader projects that we are building back on. But one that we should probably bring back is also a hydro plan update through that discussion. And it's probably overdue. We'll refine the timing as we have staff determined for who will be leading that project. We've had some staff changes in that role. So hopefully that gives the board a sense of kind of what's coming up next as well, and what to expect as we build the rest of the year.
I certainly want to thank staff for this. It's an interesting reminder, all the things that staff are working on, and as well as the board, so we don't forget. Sometimes we ask for things and then we forget about them. So it's a good reminder for everybody to be there. So thank you very much, Tracy, for putting that together, and it'll be a useful tool. Any questions? Anna?
Yeah, through you, really like the report. How many times a year can we expect this report coming to us?
That was my question. I wasn't sure if you wanted it each month or quarterly, just kind of an update.
I think it would be, personally, I think it would be helpful for the board just to have it on there as a monthly reminder and make sure that we're fully aware of what's on the plate and how much staff is doing for us.
We can include any adjustments to our timelines in that monthly periods.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see it on a monthly basis. I do have a follow-up question though, specifically to what we can expect to our next board meeting in August, which is the hazard modeling and mapping update. I think we've been waiting for this for a while. What can we expect coming to us?
Yes, certainly through the chair. Really, it's about our communication plan, as well as what areas the watershed will be targeting first. So that's kind of what's envisioned right now and laying out kind of the next steps to that process. Because it's not just a one and done. There's a big project, and certainly lots involved as we update modeling throughout the watershed. So.
Any further questions? Seeing none, is there a mover to receive the report? Mark, seconder, Hugh, discussion. Again, I'm just gonna say this is gonna be a great tool for us. I think it allows us to see what's coming up if we want to do additional research on our own to make sure if it's definitely a topic of interest for someone, then that's a good reminder as well. And I appreciate that, and certainly the staff. Obviously, things change and stuff goes on, so these are planned goals, and we understand and completely if things change, but it's always good to have goals to try to reach. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 8.5 is June for your information report. I hope everybody has signed everybody up, keeps bugging all their counselors too as well. It's very easy to do, and it provides a great deal of information about what's going on. I thank staff for all the work that they put into that. As we know, communication is a struggle for all organizations. So I think this is probably a leading technique, I think, out there to be able to provide as much information as possible and in an interactive way as well. So very good to see. Is there a mover to accept the report? Anna, Jim to second. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Does anybody have any notices of motions? Excellent. We'll go to the chair's comments. Certainly, we're moving into summer and everybody's getting busier out there. The weekends are filled up. I can keep seeing lots of great events coming up. Staff are working through budgets and the work plans for the year. So it's great to see all those things happening. One thing I wanted to share was I was able to pick up a book out front here, and it's on the first 25 years of the authority, and there's lots of great historical information in there. And our first chair was a Dr. Wilson, And he provided, there's some quotes in there from this yearly report, so I want to share one from his first report ever for the authority, and I think it's still relevant to this day. And I want to thank them for what they did, and having the vision to do this. So he said, we are pioneering in the field of conservation Ontario, and our success or failure will exert tremendous influence. Conservation in all its phases is a long-term effort. And I think we know that. It's now been way more than 25 years. But the efforts that they put in initially, if you have a chance, look through the book. I can't believe how much they got done in 20 years and the effort and cooperation that took on all levels of government. It certainly just wasn't the board, it was all levels. And I think that's a lesson for today, that if we want to truly do big things, that we have to all work together in a certain goal. And so I hope we take on that challenge of not just today, but for future time to come. One of the other things that struck me in there was they planted 4 million trees in those years. And you look at the photos, the amount of people doing it, I don't know if that's possible, but really everybody was really involved. And so they really pursued those goals and were successful at them. So obviously we're going through some challenges right now, but I think right now, after we get settled, as staff is showing us the report, we're getting there. And so we can start to move forward and keep on those long-term goals that those before us had for us. Keep going. And then I'll turn it over to Tracy for the public.
Thank you, Brian. For the chair, I also note that the copy of that book is on our website too. So I'm sure Michelle can send out the link. But yeah, 25 years of conservation. You can happen to see it at the front. We have a couple copies sitting out there. But yeah, it's always interesting to see the history of where we've been, and really kind of reinforce that, yes, we're just continuing on this path that was started now over 75 years ago. So and continuing on this path, it seems like we're continuous with change in regulatory frameworks. I noted that we just saw the posting yesterday for the provincial planning statement that now includes proposed updates to the natural heritage policies. Certainly, there doesn't seem to be a lot change in policy, but a number of definitions have been added. So we'll be looking through those details. Again, Conservation Ontario coordinates comments for all CAs to submit to these environmental registry postings. Certainly we review drafts and provide comments through that manner. As well, with section 28, we were expecting to see something by now, given that it's the summer setting of legislature. I can only guess that it won't happen until the fall now. So then we'll be keeping an eye out for that when the legislature is sitting again. So again, we're anxious to see some of the details there, but we're updated once we've been informed. That everyone is able to enjoy the summer and get a little bit of a break in July and back again in August.
Are there any members? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank staff for the excellent tour that they put on after the previous meeting of the board of directors. It's obvious there was a tremendous amount of work went into preparing it. The verbal presentations as we drove down the roads and the 3 stops were excellent. I learned a lot, and the pamphlet that was put together that we all had, that I read that afterwards, and it filled in the gaps, some things I missed during the tour. So it's unfortunate that so many of the board members were unable to attend, and I hope they at least got a copy of that pamphlet would give them some of what we saw. So I just want to thank staff for it's been a few years since we were able to have a tour, and it was well worth the time, and look forward to next year's.
Excellent. Any further member comments? Dean.
One comment, Mr. Chair, the Perth County Children's Water Festival was held May 28th in Mitchell. And just wanted to report that it was very well attended. Lots of people look to be enjoying themselves thoroughly. Lots of different booths and people, organizations presenting things at the festival. So thanks to Conservation Authority staff for their involvement and participation, and to all that organized and contributed to the event in any way possible. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Comments on the line? So with that, I will call for adjournment. Skylar, thank you very much. They're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We're gonna have to find the ability to follow number system. Excited.